Hello and welcome back, goats, to the BigBluePurple channel. Today I want to talk about the new expert dungeons added in the Dawntrail expansion, the 3 level 100 dungeons. I've honestly found myself running expert roulette this expansion more than I ever have in the past, and so I just wanted to make a video talking about these dungeons and what I think they do so well to improve the expert roulette experience. So right at the gate, I just want to say, I think the most noticeable change to dungeons this expansion and this time around is the overall pacing of these dungeons and these fights in these dungeons feel about 20% or so faster than what we're used to. And that is an incredible step up in my opinion for normal mode dungeons. But that's not to say it's some gargantuan jump in difficulty or something like that. It's the perfect amount to add to a dungeon in my opinion. Mechanics are telegraphed perfectly fairly, but you're actually expected to keep your eyes open and pay attention to them while you're doing the dungeon, and this is so refreshing because if you ran a lot of Expert Roulette and Endwalker, you'll know you were falling asleep the entire time, like half the time. Let's take a look at the second boss of Tender Valley, for example, one of my favorite fights to come out of any of the Expert dungeons this expansion. Basically, there is 2 sets of pipes in this arena. On the left side you have the circular ones, and on the right side you have the rectangular ones. The boss is going to go ahead and shoot a bomb into one of the holes in the center of the arena. So you're seeing here, he shoots it through a circle. That means it's going to come out all the circles on the left side of the arena, right? So if instead he's to shoot it through a square, they're all going to come out of the squares on the right side of the arena. Overall, it's a pretty simple mechanic, but it keeps you on your toes and it makes sure you're always checking the left and right sides of the map to see where the tubes are, where you need to stand. Additionally though, throughout the fight, he stacks different mechanics on top of this one, and that's what makes this fight really interesting. Like for instance, later into the fight, he'll shoot off a bomb into one of the holes, he'll put spreads on everybody, and then he'll have AoE bombs go off to cover most of the arena, so there's only a few safe spots. The spread markers are delayed though, so you have more time than you think to actually go and spread. You can dodge the mechanic first and then get into spread positions. And this is a common thing they do in these Dawntrail dungeons. I think it's a really good scare thing where you're like, oh shit, I have a spread on me. Like I need to find space within this dodge to spread. But usually you have to dodge first and then spread, which I think is a good way to keep it like reasonably paced for, casual players. I would also say that the ad packs in the dungeons are a little bit more interesting than usual this time around too. And that's not to say they are all the time, but sometimes they are quite unique and interesting. Like here, we see the return of kind of that Rock Tika Greatwood idea where, you've got different AoEs going off from either side of the screen and you need to use the rocks to block it while you're fighting the ads. I really like ad rooms like this. More ideas like this, please. It's so much more fun when you get to like dodge mechanics and fight the ads and pull them around at the same time. Another great example of an ad pack I really enjoyed was the one near the end of Strayboro Deadwalk you're seeing here against these 2 dolls. These motherfuckers hit hard, man. They just keep slamming their head against the floor doing these raid wads, and it's great because, the healer actually gets to AoE heal and try to keep their whole party up. It's not like the ads are only hitting the tank, and, obviously we've seen ads that do that before, but specifically these dolls, man, they hit fucking hard, and I think that's really cool. And speaking of the Strayboro Deadwalk, man, can I just say that this final boss is a masterpiece of a goddamn dungeon boss? This is such a good dungeon fight, and I look forward to it every single time I get this dungeon in Roulette. I mean, first of all, it's literally Ghost Hades, but putting that aside, right? He does this mechanic where he'll divide the arena into 4 quadrants, and then you gotta step in these blue puddles to turn yourself into a ghost and then stretch your tether. It's such a satisfying mechanic. I love these like tether stretch mechanics. It feels really good, especially in like a normal mode like this. But basically, the crux of this fight here is switching between the spirit mode and the human mode. So here, right, he does this Ghost Duster attack, which, go figures, is gonna fucking kill you if you're still a ghost. So you need to go turn back into a human, and then you can survive the mechanic. I really appreciate that they were ballsy enough to make this just a fucking straight pass or fail mechanic, because not only, right, do you feel like a dumbass after you get hit by it, but it's also like, it's a very good learning tool, because if you get hit by it and you get this big red X over your head, you're like, yeah, I see what I did wrong there. It also really helps that Dawntrail added these like red text boxes. It says he's preparing a ward against the living, so go figure Flesh Buster is gonna kill you if you're not turned into a ghost. The fight just ultimately feels like a fantastic balancing act of turning into a ghost, turning back into a human, and dodging all the different types of mechanics he throws at you. In my opinion, this is one of the most unique and memorable dungeon bosses we have ever seen in this entire game, and I actually cannot believe how cool this damn fight is. Of course, it would be impossible to talk about Strayboro Deadwalk without mentioning this absolute dickhead of a first boss. This guy's gimmick is that if you get hit by any of the random bullshit he throws on your screen, you're not allowed to press buttons for 10 seconds, bitch. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. At first, I just fucking hated this fight outright. I thought it was terrible. I thought this was a goddamn awful boss. But I'll be real with you, it's grown on me, and I hope they don't nerf it. I hope they leave it intact as it is. You know, moving objects in 14 do not sit well together, and it's why this fight pissed me off a lot at first. But at the end of the day, if you just run the dungeon a bunch and you're going to be doing expert a lot anyway, you get used to the hitboxes and the behaviors of the enemies he spawns in, and you'll get more used to the fight. And honestly, it's just kind of funny watching people get hit by the mechanics and not being able to do anything for 10 seconds. But I'm curious what you guys think of this fight. Do you fucking hate this one? I know a lot of people probably do. Do you want it nerfed? I mean, I'm seeing people on the forums fucking crying about this shit, but hey, it's pretty much always bait on the forums anyway, isn't it? The second boss in Strayboro is actually pretty solid as well, though. It has this mechanic where he'll basically tether a ghost to a teacup, and then you're gonna have to watch the teacup spin. This is like a full-on fucking Mario Party minigame, and I am all for it, because man, it can actually be pretty hard to keep track of these motherfuckers, especially when he's got two of them going at once. So, you know, you gotta go opposite of the teacup once you see which one is unsafe. I still got hit there because the fucking AoE is gigantic, man. What I kind of appreciate about this fight is, in reality, you're probably not going to be able to track the teacup 100% of the time, and you are probably going to get hit by this mechanic every now and then. But it doesn't kill you, it just gives you a ball up, takes about half your health, you know, you live and you move on. And I think that's the perfect way to handle a mechanic like this, where it's actually pretty damn hard to keep track of, but it's not that punishing if you get hit by it, like unless you stand in the overlap of two of them, of course. Overall, Strayboro is a dungeon that has grown on me so much since I initially played it after beating the story, man. At first, dude, I was not on board with this dungeon. That first boss had me pissed off. I just wasn't on board with the aesthetic or the music. I thought it was too goofy, but man, this dungeon is sick. It has grown on me so much, and I absolutely look forward to getting this one whenever I do my expert roulettes. Speaking of great bosses, I am a huge fan of the first boss in the Alexandria dungeon. It does this cool kind of shape mechanic where he'll put a bunch of different shapes on the floor that'll do either crosses or circle AoEs, and you just have to follow the order that they showed up in and dodge them accordingly. It's a very easy memory check, but he just makes you dodge so many in sequence that it's always a nice little satisfying dodge every time you have to do it. Later in the fight, he'll even start combining it with cleaves and stuff, so you have to memorize like when the cleave is gonna go off and then dodge the other AoEs, so you don't accidentally like dodge into the cleave, eat shit, and then dodge into the other thing and also eat shit. Overall, it's not a super hard mechanic, and it's telegraphed very, very well. It's just a satisfying dodge, and it feels pretty fresh, especially because it's such a long sequence of dodges, and it's not just like 1, 2, 3 dodges. And the final boss of Alexandria is another one of my absolute favorites this time around. Something this boss does that I'm extremely happy about is she doesn't actually telegraph whether she's going to hit left or right with a big orange fucking thing on the floor saying danger, right? Instead, you actually have to watch the boss and see what's going on. You see, I got hit there because I wasn't watching the boss, right? But you have to pay attention to the side she moves her cannon to, like you're seeing there, and then you have to dodge the AoE, right? The orange shows up, and by the time it shows up, if you're standing in it, you're definitely getting hit. So why is this such a good thing? Well, it's helping to finally bridge that gap just a little bit between expert dungeons and extreme trials. And what exactly do I mean by that, right? Obviously, we don't want our dungeons to be as hard as extreme trials. That's not what dungeons are for. But 14 has a serious issue that we all are probably aware of if we've been playing for a while, and it's that the jump to extreme from normal content is very overwhelming and significant. It can be extremely difficult to make that jump into high-end content because it's so intimidating. It requires you to learn so many things that weren't present in normal content, and it's just like unlike anything else in the game. But here, with these new expert dungeons, they're actually giving you a little taste of what to expect in Extreme. They're showing you telegraphs that aren't as simple as don't stand in orange. You actually need to look at what the boss is doing and react to it. This is so good because what it's going to do is it's going to take the average player and it's going to force them to get just a little bit better at the game, right? They don't have to be amazing at it, right? These dungeons aren't fucking super hard mode, Criterion Savage bullshit, right? They're just a nice little step up to make sure your eyes are open and you're paying attention. I would argue that right now, taking the jump to Extreme from Expert is the easiest that it has ever been, right? Don't get me wrong, Extreme is still going to be quite a bit different, and if you've never done anything like it before, it's going to be challenging to you. But the new extreme, especially the first one, is very, very approachable. None of the mechanics are super hard to wrap your head around or understand, and I think it's an amazing starting point because it teaches you a lot of core ideas you're going to use in other extremes as well. But I will talk about the extremes in much, much more detail in their own video in the future. Either way, my point is, it seems like the devs are really starting to try to remedy the issue of the jump from normal to extreme and getting into high-end content as a newer player. And I think that's especially really important in this expansion, right? Because it's advertised as a start of a new journey and a good jump-in point for new players. So yeah, if you couldn't tell, I'm just really goddamn impressed with the dungeons this time around. I mean, I don't feel like we've ever had dungeons of this quality before, and I don't even think it's recency bias anymore either, because I still find myself queuing up for Expert Roulette all the time just to do these fights again. They're actually really fun. Now, on that topic, one of my biggest concerns, and something I am praying they don't repeat this expansion, is making it so when the new dungeons come out in 7.1 and 7.2, do not cycle out the old ones. Keep everything in the Expert Roulette. Please, for the love of God, keep everything in the Expert Roulette, man. Because when there is only 2 dungeons in your Expert Roulette, right? You know what I'm talking about. Lapis Manalis and Ether Font. If you played a lot in 6.4 and you had to grind fucking dungeons a lot in 6.4, it's just so damn boring when you know it can only be 2 dungeons every single day. So I'm begging you, Square Enix, this time please, every time you release a level 100 new dungeon, just keep them all in the Expert Roulette. It's going to be so much better on a daily basis if you've got like 5 different dungeons you could possibly get. That being said, this is Final Fantasy XIV we're talking about, and they basically never like to break the mold and always follow a very strict and rigid schedule. So do I expect them to actually keep all the experts in the roulette? No, not at all. But yeah, all in all, guys, I think the quality of the dungeons this expansion are a gargantuan step up from what we're used to. I enjoy running every single dungeon that's been released this expansion, except for maybe the level 91 one, which I find to be a little bit boring. In the future, I'd like to actually make a video ranking all the Dawntrail dungeons from worst to best, at least the ones we have so far, because I think they deserve it. I think they're of a high enough quality to, actually be able to rank them from worst to best. Otherwise, I'd absolutely love to know what you guys are thinking about these Expert Roulettes. Do you think I'm just gassing these up way too much and they're actually just mid and you fucking hate running dungeons no matter what? Or do you think this is a really, really good step in the right direction? Personally, I really, really hope this pattern continues into the patches. Like, if we just got like all the patch dungeons to be this level of difficulty and this level of quality, it's gonna be an amazing expansion for people who enjoy actual combat content. So for my final verdict, I think that these expert dungeons added in Dawntrail are arguably the best dungeons they've ever created in the history of this game. I think the fights remain to be extremely fun, even on repeat runs, doing your expert every single day. I still don't get sick of these bosses, I still enjoy fighting them. And this is a very stark contrast to the post-Endwalker dungeons for me, which I got extremely sick of extremely fast, even if I like some of them to some extent, right? I think the Ether Font is a beautiful dungeon with great music, but at the end of the day, man, I just got tired of it. Man, and speaking of great music, my personal favorite out of the 3 experts this time around has got to be Tender Valley in terms of the music. I think it is so damn good. Stray Boro Deadwalk, I'm not a huge fan of the music there. It's kind of goofy, not really something I would like turn up to, you know what I'm saying? Either way, I just kind of wanted to make this video to start a discussion about the expert dungeons and just kind of gush about how much I've been enjoying them, because I seriously believe this is a significant and noticeable step up in quality. I'd love to hear what you guys are thinking though of these dungeons, so please let me know in the comments which one of these experts is your personal favorite to run. Are you a big fan of the dungeons this time? Do you find them lots of fun to repeatedly go through? Or do you just think they're okay and have you gotten sick of them already? Let me know. Otherwise, remember to drop a like on the video, but only if you did, and subscribe to the BigBluePurple channel if you're not already. We are so close to 5,000 subscribers, so hey, if you're not subscribed, help me get there. I try to make near weekly Final Fantasy XIV content, and I also like uploading variety stuff about fighting games, roguelikes, and just other genres that I'm interested in. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next one.